Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Hello, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. Today's guest, Shirley Thiessen, her life looks nothing like she had planned for. She's the author of The Little Black Funeral Dress, a speaker, founder of a nonprofit, CornerBend Ministries, and a grief educator. Shirley, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Teri. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes. So bring us up to speed. Tell us a little bit about you and your path and your journey that's brought you to where you're at today.
For sure. Well, I will bring you into my story starting in the year 2012. So my husband and I have a daughter, Chantel, who was 20 years old at that time in university. And our son, Jordan, was a recent grad, and he got married on October 6th. So like you and others do with your kids, we had invested so much love, time, energy, prayer, and money into our son. And we were so excited to just celebrate this new season. So we went down to California for a vacation and thinking, oh, our son is off the payroll, like life is great.
Yeah.
Well, October 18th was a beautiful day. And I remember thinking, I want to get to the pool with a book and relax as soon as possible. But first I had to buy something for our condo kitchen. I decided I was just going to shop like my husband does, just in and out, find it, buy it, take it home, done. But as I walked into the store, I was quickly distracted by a rack of dresses on clearance. And forgetting that I was in a hurry, I went over to have just a quick peek. Well, there was a black dress that clearly was on the wrong rack, but I was attracted to it. I remember holding it up and admiring the design, the soft fabric. It was nicely lined, but I didn't need a dress. It wasn't my size. I put it back. And as I walked away, I heard these words: I want you to buy that black dress. You are going to a funeral. Well, my head whipped around to see who said that. There were people in the store, but no one was near me. Confused, I continued to walk away, but this time I could read the words in my head like a news ticker. Before I knew what was happening, I'm standing in this change room in front of a full-length mirror wearing the dress. It fit so well. It felt so comfortable. But my rational thought was this: I don't know anyone who has recently died. I have no funeral to attend. What am I doing with this dress?
Yeah.
And that message repeated. And I thought, I've heard God's whisper to my spirit. I felt his nudges, but never before did I receive such a bold directive. I couldn't deny it or avoid it. And I bought the dress, unsure to whose funeral I was meant to wear it. Well, I didn't have long to wait before this message was revealed. So a few hours after that shopping trip, a California police officer was at the door of our condo. And in a few minutes, my worst nightmare started to unravel. Our son, Jordan, 23 years old, married for only 12 days, had been killed in a workplace accident. It took me a few moments to connect the dots. That black dress, the one I just purchased. Like now I knew to whose funeral I was meant to wear it. My son's funeral. And I sobbed in disbelief.
My gosh. Wow.
So that just set me on a trajectory into facing what was my worst fear, losing a child, something I didn't ever anticipate being able to survive. But what I've learned through this grief journey, and it's been almost 10 years, is that something that Dr. John Townsend is as an author and a psychologist and business coach. And he says, I hope I get this right, but he says something like people's ability to go through difficult things with resiliency is directly related to the friends they keep.
Mm.
And I realized that God was actually caring for our family through courageous friends who were able to push aside their own discomfort with death and grief and loss and express empathy to us in many different ways. That was almost like lending us hope when we didn't have any left. And that was life-giving. And so I also realized that, oh my goodness, how come I didn't know how to express empathy in these beautiful ways to my grieving friends before my son died? And I realized that we live in a death denying, grief avoidant society. This is not a conversation that many of us have. And so I now spend all my time helping to educate others like the younger me who just feel so uncertain how to support their grieving friends, and knowing that it is imperative that we do care for each other in practical ways. I want to help others like I've been helped.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine what this journey has been like for you. As again, like you've probably you've been spending your time with other, and speaking and getting out there in front of people, but I can't imagine like losing a child. I mean, that's probably losing anyone in general that we love and care about is, obviously devastating, but just your own child is, I can't even imagine.
Well, it's out of order, right? Like we
Yes.
anticipate that we'll lose a parent,
Right.
our spouse possibly, but yeah, we don't ever anticipate having to plan a funeral for our child.
So what was that process like for you to go through something so devastating that has a ripple effect in all areas of our lives, and really stepping back into and reclaiming your life after this tragic accident?
Well, everyone who is faced with a devastating loss of some kind, or a pain or a traumatic moment, we all have a choice. We're either going to go down a route of bitterness and be angry, mad at the world, and kind of just stuck there, or we're going to choose to say, you know what? I don't like this plan necessarily. This is not what I would have chose for my life, but I am going to leverage it for good somehow. I'm going to use that pain and give it a purpose. Well, I'm embarrassed to tell you that I actually went down the route of bitterness at first. And I became so angry at God. I got angry at life. I thought it was unfair that other people had all their children and I did not. I mean, self-pity is a very human emotion, but I started to see how ugly I was becoming with that bitterness. And it was actually a gift that some friends bought me that actually triggered a complete switch in my perspective. So they bought me this sign from a gift store that says, be the kind of woman that when your feet hit the floor each morning, the devil says, oh crap, she's up. And that sign made me laugh. And it also made me think, like, on whose team am I going to be? When you fall into bitterness and self-pity and self-absorption, you're choosing not to leverage your pain for good. You're not participating with God. You're participating with the enemy of your soul. And so that was kind of the catalyst for me to decide, okay, so how can I bring a meaningful purpose to this pain?
Mm.
And I actually met a lot of people who also had lost young adult children or a spouse who did not have caring friends like I did. And I realized how blessed I was. And so I wanted to be that for those people. And so it was like paying it forward.
Yeah. I mean, that is not easy,
Oh no.
choosing to make that choice. And I think there's a lot of folks that, and I know that if I was in that same situation, I would probably choose the first, right? And I think that's normal and natural for us to want to. I mean, I think that, and again, when we look at the stages of grief, like that is the process, right? And it doesn't happen instantaneously for us to even think about the second choice of like, you know what, let's create some purpose out of this pain, because I think that's not our natural tendency, because we want to sit in that process of grief and loss and that piece of it. And I think that's what brings us possibly to that clarity of, okay, let's wake up to this other idea of this choice. And that's where the transformation happens, right? That is where the power lies in, finding that purpose that you've experienced from that pain. And so, having said that, what's you mentioned this earlier, is that we are really terrible, I believe, in our culture of understanding and what to say, how to say it. Because I think sometimes we are, like you said, we're so avoidant of those conversations. So I think a lot of times, and I know I've experienced this, personally, where, people don't know how to process it for themselves, let alone for another person. So what we tend to do is we try to withdraw, we try to avoid, we try to, and that's probably counterintuitive to what we could be doing for someone who's experienced loss. So unpack this for us. How can we be better at, or give us some language on how we can, really show up for folks that have experienced loss?
Mm-hmm. Well, I affectionately call these caring people who supported me, I call them hope heroes. Because as I said, they just lent us hope when we didn't have any, it was leaking out. And so I noticed that there were 4 things that these caring people, these hope heroes did. And I gave it an acrostic, LAP, LAPP. And so the first one, L, is for listen. And that sounds so simple, but we live in such a noisy world where we're trying to be heard. And to actually create a safe place where our grieving friend can kind of just untangle their own thoughts and just express whatever they need to express. So that means not looking at your phone, being completely present, asking gentle follow-up questions, such as much as you're comfortable, tell me more. Because that grieving friend needs permission to kind of speak and to be sharing their raw, unedited emotions and knowing that there's no judgment. So listen is the first one. The second one is A, is for acknowledge the loss. And this really means validating their experience and their emotions as worthy of your empathy and compassion. And so I noticed that our Hope Heroes did this in so many different ways. It was like mentioning my son's name and maybe sharing a story or something that they remember about him. Maybe it was, I received a beautiful necklace with my son's name engraved. Even the sign that I mentioned to you earlier, like that was just a beautiful acknowledgement that this was tough. This was really hard. And as you do that, you're extending empathy. And I really want to make a distinction between empathy and sympathy for a moment.
Yeah.
So sympathy, when somebody says, well, please accept my condolences. I absolutely hate that. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's like you're holding that grieving person at arm's length. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so bad. I'm like, that's too bad. It's feeling for someone, but empathy, on the other hand, is feeling with someone.
Yeah.
It's imagining what it's like to experience that for yourself. And it's saying, I don't even understand this grief. And I don't even know what to say, but I want you to know I care so much for you and I'm with you. to actually help that griever believe that they are not alone is so powerful. And so
Yeah.
then the P in our first lap is pray. Now, I'm a woman of faith, and I know that there is power in prayer. And there's things that when I'm looking at my broken friend who is just excruciatingly in so much pain, I know that God can do for them things I cannot. And so
Yeah.
I'm asking God to protect them physically, because grief affects our whole body, protect their relationships. My husband and I grieve completely different, and that could have caused a wedge in our marriage. So praying for the relationships, praying for their emotions and their spiritual health. And then the last P in this acrostic lap is patiently be present. You know, the younger me used to think that grief is a private thing, that it's best dealt with all alone. But I realized through my Hope Heroes that their presence was such an important part of my healing.
Mm.
Also, I also thought that, grief was pretty much wrapped up in a year. It's an event that
Right.
kind of, it's all over now. And I realize now that the only people who think there's a timeline have never experienced a devastating loss themselves.
Yeah.
And so this is a life-altering experience that will be something to reconcile to for the rest of your earthly life.
Yeah. And every kind of major milestone or, experience or next level, it just gets, brought back up in a new way. And as we grow and expand and evolve, it's there with us as we grow and expand and evolve. And I have a question, because I think this is where I have seen, you may not know this about me, but I used to be a therapist for 25 years. And then I started combining, energy psychology, and then started playing with quantum physics and all of that fun stuff around energy. But as a previous therapist, I think sometimes when I looked at grief and loss, the clients that I saw or things like that is, people were around, and I like that you call them, hope heroes. They were around in the beginning phases, because I think there is, like what you were saying, there is like this time stamp that after 6 months, after a year, you should be back on your feet and good to go. But I think there's something that's to be said about keeping these folks in our thoughts and in our prayers long term, right?
Yes.
For important anniversary dates and things like that. Do you have any tips or suggestions around how we can do a better job of doing that, where it's not, because I think sometimes people avoid doing that because they're afraid they're going to stir up emotions, or they're afraid that they need to move on, and so do we need to move on. And if I bring up an anniversary date or just reach out to them, that's kind of being, I don't know, there's something around that. What are your thoughts, or what do you suggest kind of in this process? Like what has been helpful, or kind of the hope heroes? What are some of the suggestions you can make so that we can all be better hope heroes?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, one of the things that we can all do is to acknowledge, like you said, those special dates, like the birthday of that person who has passed away, or the death anniversary. I'll give you an example. I have a friend who I don't get to see very often, but she has chosen to do something that is just remarkable. So because my son died on the 18th day of October, she has chosen to send me a text on the 18th day of each and every month, January
Wow.
to December, for nearly 10 years. So
Wow.
just this last week, it was the 18th. And again, she sent me this beautiful text. I mean, sometimes she shares a memory about my son. Sometimes she just tells me how much she loves and cares for me. It's all different things. But she's so intentional. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody does that every month, but for sure on the birthdays or anniversaries, and like 30 years later, continue to do that, because you're not reminding that grieving friend that, I shouldn't bring up their name because you know what, they're past it now. No, like my son is top of mind every day. You're not going to remind me of a sadness that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, I am glad that we can, get that out there. And I had we had a staff member one time, her father had died on a certain day. And what her tradition was, and I just think this is beautiful. So I think it's appropriate to share. So if anyone wants ideas on how to like support their, grieving friends, is that she would do the same thing every month, that she would, that let's say it's the 18th. And on that 18th, she would pick a new friend or a new person that came into her life, and she would write a letter kind of in his honorance of like, his message was like about, bringing kindness to the world and doing good things for people. And so it was just beautiful. She puts a gift in the mail and, mails it out, in honorance of her late father. And I just thought that was really brilliant. And the other thing is, as we're talking about this, something that we have, a tradition that we started when my daughter was young was, for Mother's Days and Father's Day. Like we love getting cards, but I was like, gosh, there's, I want to keep these cards, but yet I'm going to have like this gigantic stack. Right. And so we started doing this notebook where it's like a spiral bound notebook. And so every year, we put in a picture of her. So, obviously, my husband and I, take turns of, helping, with her, and she'll put a picture in there and she'll write a message in this book. And then I will take and do a reflection from that year. And, and then that's all in one place. And it's, we have a Father's Day and our Mother's Day. Right. But I can almost see like that could be something that could be really powerful for not only the grieving person, and doing that in honorance of their birth date, or their maybe the death anniversary or whatever, but even just having or something else that someone else can, your hope heroes can combine in something like that. But I just think it's a beautiful way of honoring,
It is
not only living, but the deceased, that we've truly loved and cared about. And so I think there's creative ways that we can honor. So I hope this gives people the permission to think outside the box and think about other ways that we can honor our friends, our family members, including ourselves, that we've lost loved ones along the way.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and that is to bring out the best things about our loved one who has died and leverage that to bless someone else. That is a beautiful way to give our pain a purpose. And
yes.
So yeah, that is tremendous. I know, like my son was always known for his humor and his cards and as well as his words of affirmation. He always did both, and he would fill up all the white space of a card with his own handwriting and his own words, which were so meaningful. And I do have that big, huge box of all his cards.
Yeah.
And so, just to think about how can I keep his memory alive, I do that. I intentionally try to write cards that express both a bit of humor, but also words of affirmation and love in his honor. And so I think we can all bring out sort of the best characteristics of our loved one who has died and use that to bless someone else. Is a beautiful way to give our pain a purpose.
Yeah, I really love that. I love that he filled up all the white space. I even feel like there's something even juicier about that. You think about like having this card and you just like, I'm going to use up all the space that I can possibly use up and just, pour in this love and light to people. I just love that. That's, what I'm inspired by that. I love writing handwritten notes. I mean, that's kind of like my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna let your son's legacy live on. I'm gonna commit to doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Because I think sometimes, again, like, why not? Why not? That's something simple that we can do to let a legacy live on. That's beautiful. So where can people connect with you? And now do you do this full time now, traveling and speaking and spreading this word? Because I think it's so incredibly valuable and so incredibly needed and required Because I think, I agree with you, as you said earlier, is that we are, grief avoidant, and, we just are uncomfortable with it. But I think when we have these powerful conversations of just having this conversation and saying it's okay and I think it's okay for us to kind of flubble through it, like just not having it all figured out. But, how do we get ourselves one step closer to, really supporting the people that we love and care about in their time of loss? So where can people connect with you?
Well, my website, shirleythiessen.com. On there, I do have a little free PDF where people can get 8 ideas of how to come alongside their grieving friends. And I really want to challenge people. There are things that you could say that are very wounding. And so I want to help people to avoid that and to actually say the things that are helpful.
Yeah.
And so I actually provide that. And that's important because empathy is to build trust, and healthy relationships have lots of trust. And so my whole goal is to make the world full of hope heroes so that it feels like a kinder, more compassionate place.
That's so yummy. And so, is that the things that can be wounding for folks? Can they get that on the free PDF?
There are some ideas, but also
Perfect.
my book, The Little Black Funeral Dress, 5 Things
Perfect.
I Wish I'd Known About Grief. And that's also on my website or Amazon. But yeah, it's a short read, but so important to know just how can we come alongside.
Perfect. I love that. So please visit her website, check out that free PDF, and then go over and grab a copy of her book. I think we can all do a little bit to make a big difference. So thank you so much, Shirley, for being here and really sharing your powerful story. As a mom, and for the moms that are out there, I can't even imagine what this journey has been through. But as you have said, you've turned that pain into a purpose. And, with that becomes a powerful message and a powerful movement to really transform the way that we do life and we do, have relationships with people. So thank you so much for being this light and allowing your son's legacy live through your work.
Thank you for this opportunity, Teri.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.